Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Pilot Podcast.
What would you say has been the most challenging experience you've had in single pilot operation? What was that thing like?
Okay, it was on my favorite aircraft, the 210, and they're notorious for this. It's the alternator that fails and you get no power on the aircraft. So I was flying from Pofuri to, I think it was Petersburg Civil at that time. And obviously you do go through Mikado airspace, military airspace. So I was sitting at level 100. All of a sudden you just see your stack, your comm, everything going off one at a time. And you're like, uh-oh, what am I going to do now? But luckily, that's one thing that Stan now teaches you is, take your handheld with you on the 210 because it's notorious. Take your iPad, then you can get your directions correct. So luckily I had that day. I had everything that I needed. But previous time, none. So that day was like my day. So yeah. Everything, you can't do any transponder codings, you can't communicate with Mikado through military base, that military airspace. And then you have to get the undercarriage out and no flaps, nothing. You just, uh-oh. So that was a challenging experience, but it was fun to get through, I would say.
Where did you end up in that flight?
Petersburg Civil.
And what do you do now? So you land that side, you've had obviously alternator failure, you have no support, you're stuck, you're not dispatching. Where to from there?
So initially I used the handheld to contact Polokwane to get into Petersburg Civil. However, with the David Clarks, I would recommend anyone to get the Bose. David Clarks, you can't talk to anyone. And you try and get the handheld and the cockpit is so loud and you can't hear a word. And you're just like, I've got a radio failure. I'm landing at Petersburg Civil. I don't care. So you arrive and then, I just called the AMO and they came with a new battery, a new alternator. They checked everything and I had to fly back at night, which is a new experience for me as well in charters. So that was something different as well. All in one day.
Aviation does challenge you like that.
Absolutely.
And how did your things, so you're flying a 210, single crew, carrying packs. I imagine IF becomes a bit of a challenge.
It does. However, the regulations nowadays, they stipulate that you can only fly during the day, daylight, and VFR. So when it comes to those days that it's challenging, luckily thunderstorms are isolated sometimes, so you dodge those mothers. But other times, you just stay on the ground, wait. If it takes a night, you stay over wherever you are. That's it.
That's a lot of pressure for you, though. I mean, how do you sell that to the passengers? Because I imagine they used to, large commercial jet transport, they come rain, snow, shine, you kind of going. How do you deal with the pressure of having to say no? Because history is well written of young aviators being pressurized into going into conditions which they may not necessarily be equipped to handle.
Yeah.
Or in some instances in the past, they haven't been trained to handle. And it could have been avoided just simply by saying no.
Yeah.
How do you manage that? How do you stop the pressure from getting to you? What advice would you have for young aviators, say, going into a similar field to have the confidence to say no?
I would say it is difficult at times, but always err on the safe side. However bad it is in the situation, say if your passenger needs to be at OR Tambo at a specific time, you have to tell them before they even leave the aircraft or come to the aircraft, you have to leave at the specific time. If it's a minute later, that's it, finished and clear. You can't go anywhere. We are staying on the ground, you're staying overnight, you're going to get another ticket, and that's it, finished and clear.
So with you not being able to, say, fly into instrument conditions or flying at night, the planning must be quite critical then. Do you have any hard, fast rules in your mind when planning where you're saying, we're not really going to be able to go into these conditions? Or what do you use as a bellwether to say, oof, this flight's actually not looking too good, we should postpone? When looking at, say, your en route conditions.
So en route conditions, I'd say, I do look at the map and you get the MSAs and you look at the weather apps that you have. And if it's like overcast in those areas, low clouds, mist, fog, you ain't going to see the ground if your MSA is like at 8,900 feet, because you have to be visual before you descend. So that's virtually impossible. So if you're en route and you have that problem, go to your alternate. If your alternate is it's not correct in sense of the weather, then you go back to base. That's it, finish and clear.
That simple. Huh?
Yeah.
Have you ever been in situations where, say, the weather's perhaps caught you out?
Absolutely.
Tell us about.
I can tell you about 2 scenarios. So there was one, it seemed like a perfect, beautiful day down to Ladysmith. It was the east of Ladysmith. I actually went down to this little dirt strip, but it's not even an airstrip. It was just like a field.
Looked like a road.
And it was actually a weed farm, unfortunately. So I took these 3 passengers there, and they were doing some, business, commercial business with weed, etc.
I guess it was a legit business.
Absolutely.
It isn't like
no, nothing.
Narcos type.
No. No, definitely not. No suspicious, stuff happening there. But we landed at this place, and I was looking at a weather app, and the weather was building from the south, from Durban side, etc. And it was getting seriously, seriously dark. And I was trying to call these passengers, but obviously it's on a farm. You can't get any connectivity with phones, etc. And I was trying to get hold of them. I spoke to the farm owner, and she was like, okay, I'm going to drive out to them. And she's going to tell them, okay, we need to go. And as we got into the plane, promise you, there was hail, there was rain. The runway or field was muddy. And then you had these 3 high people just cheering you on. And you
high-level people, is that what you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was one. And then the second one was with a very good friend of mine, Herman Crawford. And I think we were flying back from Pafuri again as well. And pretty much you're flying into IF conditions. Luckily, we were 2 crew, and I was, starting out on the 210. And he's a grade 2 instructor, and the weather was closing off ahead. And all he would say, just go towards the light. Anywhere you see there's a light spot, go towards. And then you go to the light spot, and everywhere around you, there would be thunderstorms everywhere and lightning going off, and you would freak out. Sheesh, it was scary. Never again.
So you just try pushing on.
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
suppose everybody has those experiences where you learn what your limits are.
Absolutely.
Big lesson from that day, what would you say?
I would say stay on the ground always.
Don't go towards the light.
Go towards the light, definitely. Just not a lightning.
Just don't be in the position where you have to go towards the light. Lest you end up going towards the light.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
So single crew, light aircraft, charter, obviously a lot of excitement.
Yeah.
Great way to build truly incredible operational experience.
Absolutely.
It's far more limiting than, say, a multi-crew environment. And it's interesting how you start there in such a limiting environment, and then kind of it almost starts to get a bit easier from there. And it's such an incredible experience, because a lot of people say jump, they miss that single engine piston phase, whether it be instruction or initial charter, and they go, say, to more multi-crew type operations. So you've just transitioned from more single pilot to, you're starting to transition more to the multi-crew aspect now.
Yes, absolutely.
How did you find you did your initial King U 200 racing, huh?
Yes.
How was that transitioning from, say, single pilot VFR multi-crew IFR type operation. And what was that experience like for you, and how was the jump?
It was very challenging. Hey? It's difficult to learn two different aspects of aviation. VFR is pretty much you look out the window, very easy, cool. You can track where you are. IFR, I find roads, etc.
Yeah, I follow her.
But IFR, it's pretty much transitioning for me. It was very easy for me in a sense that people that trained with me or taught me, etc., they would sit with me and put screens up, windscreens up, and you can't see anything, and you just fly by your gauges, and you just practice. But you do find, areas that you struggle in a sense in the beginning, but over time you get more confidence. It becomes a lot easier.
What was it like flying the 200 for the first time? Were you a little bit nervous?
Very nervous.
Tell us about that.
I would say there's a lot of pressure in that sense, once you get on board, because the captain expects you to do possibly most of the work in a sense, but, doing the luggage, doing passenger briefing, doing radio calls, doing the flight logs, checking the captain if he's doing the correct job. It becomes challenging in that sense. And no.
So that first day on the 200, was it just a blur?
No, it was not a blur. It was very exciting for me, actually. I will remember it to this day. It's a fantastic journey to be on, and there's great people out there that will carry you through, that experience, and they teach you on how to do things. Like, it's a very different way of getting through, a multi-crew scenario.
So you say the biggest change from, say, your 210 operation to the 200, what stood out for you the most challenging?
The most challenging, I think, just acting as a second crew, because you've got to work as a unit. Okay, so, you're used to being on your own person, your own checks, etc. And now you've got to work with someone else. You've got to find a cockpit gradient that works for you as well as a captain, and you just work in perfect harmony. And that's a challenge, I would say, for some.
And I suppose, are you flying with different captains all the time?
Absolutely, yes.
How do you adapt to each captain? Because I suppose everybody's very different. And they're often referred to as the right-hand seat, or the first officers being the chameleon in the right-hand seat.
Yeah, so different captains have different aspects, I would say. But, there's always the same outcome, that you have a common objective to get the flight done. And it's a repetitive thing. Like, it happens over and over again, that you do your checks, he does his checks, and that's how you work together. You
kind of pick up the rhythm over time.
Absolutely.
And I suppose you learn how each captain prefers to operate, what they like, what they don't like. A lot of people talk about the first officer's black book.
Yeah.
Do you have a black book?
Maybe.
It's just mental notes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep it in my right pocket. It's fine.
And on your time on the 200, obviously you're flying through weather now and that kind of thing. Have you had any interesting or experiences with that so far?
I'd say on the 200, not so much, because it's been a winter season, so it's been clear weather up until this stage. But obviously, you get the August winds, etc.
Yeah.
That's a challenge.
It's different.
It's new techniques that you got to learn, I would say.
So how did I came across you on social media.
Yes.
You're obviously very passionate about posting what you do on the day-to-day. And I must say, it's incredibly interesting. I found it very interesting.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed the videos. When did you start doing that? And what was the motivation to start posting a life in the day of Kelly Jane McCauley?
I think the initial reason why I wanted to post about it, all the charter life, etc., was I was looking at TikTok, and all you were getting was the training side of it, and people getting PPLs, CPLs, and how they are developing in that kind of sector. However, there was no transition from your CPL to your charter life, and how that works out, and how the life, builds in that respect. So yeah, it was like a acknowledgement that there's nothing out on media that does the transition from CPL or training to charter life.
Yeah, I must say, I think that's what caught my attention about your content is that it's. I don't spend a lot of time on social media. Try not to. Yeah.
Oh, damn.
It can get, I suppose, distracting. It's a lot of 30-second clips one could be through, but your stuff really, really did catch my eye because it is very unique. What kind of reception have you had from people out in industry, and what kind of feedback have you had? Any good stories?
I'd say very positive feedback, in a sense that people have asked me, what direction should I go in? Should I do instructions? Should I do the charter life? Should I go to Federal Air or any other? And yeah, it's just been a very welcoming reception in that sense. It's, yeah.
So you find that people are getting inspired and they are quite
Absolutely, yeah.
intrigued by
Yeah.
what you're doing. And being a lady in aviation in the charter industry, what is a predominantly male-dominated
Absolutely.
industry, how have you found that experience?
I would say it is definitely there in a sense. However, I think females are getting more opportunity nowadays. In South Africa, I think alone South Africa, it's more of a male Afrikaans environment, I'd say.
I suppose it depends where you operate.
You get the farmers, you get the mines, and for a woman to go to like a mine wearing flak jackets, that's not
commonly seen. Yeah, you don't
No.
often see that.
So that's unusual for a female, in that sense.
But you find the industry otherwise generally quite accepting and
Absolutely,
willing
yeah.
to teach
I'd
and
say,
share.
the company that I'm working for, they employ females literally on the spot, I would say.
So you definitely say there's more of a female presence growing or coming up through the South African aviation industry. I must admit, I have seen that over the years. There's definitely a lot more ladies coming into the industry and forming a critical part of it.
Yeah,
which is fantastic to see.
I think a common thing with females is that they don't think they can get married and have children and further their career, but you can actually. And I've got a few friends that have had children and they are at Airlink and they're growing their career, and it doesn't stop for females.
Everything in life is about balance, after all.
Absolutely.
So there'll be people listening to this podcast or have come across your content. They're thinking, aviation, we saw COVID. It was challenging. Did you experience any challenges during COVID yourself?
Absolutely.
I got retrenched though. A lot of us out there.
Luckily I didn't.
What were your challenges?
So for us at the charter, it was actually, we've got a booking sheet and we had flights like booked through months and months and months, and it was chock-a-block booked. And the next day, clean. And it was so difficult to get through that period. And for all our crew, it was such a struggle to earn, on a monthly basis, because that's their income for the month.
That's all activity based, right, guys? Aren't on a fixed salary.
Not fixed salaries. It's all freelance based, and you earn as you fly. So it was very difficult for our crew, and very challenging for someone in ops to try and get them flights when it's just like, business meetings. We are only allowed to do business meetings, or someone going to a farm for a business meeting, or government officials. And that was it. That was the only flying, and it was very few over that time. It was a challenge.
How did you get through that phase?
How did we get through it? So, during COVID, we had certain regulations. We had to fill in a form, send it to CIA. They would approve it. Then we could fly to Cape Town. But it was only like one leg, and it was very difficult to keep crew going in that sense. However, they did freelance, and they are freelancers, and they do multiple companies. I'm sure they accumulated, income over that time. So it was a struggle, but
Yeah.
I think we got through it.
One of my mates was very busy prior to COVID as a charter pilot. He was quite active in industry. And I think he said over that year he did 20 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. It
Well,
was
he
a
said
challenge.
he had 20 hours of income in the whole year.
And I mean, if you think about it, you do your renewals, your soft
Yeah,
courses, your
you still have to do all
SCPT,
of it.
CRM, DG, it all costs money, and you got a family to look after and property to, pay rent for, and your car loans, etc. It was a challenge.
It was a wild time
Yeah,
for everyone. For
absolutely,
anyone in aviation, it was a wild time.
absolutely.
That was probably the toughest period that I've experienced in aviation. I think it's probably one of the toughest periods South African aviation, global aviation's ever seen.
Absolutely.
Aviation's obviously in a much better place right now. It's probably one of the best places the market's ever seen for pilots in, I suppose, ever.
Absolutely.
And the opportunities at the moment they're everywhere. For people.
The season is now.
The season is now. Now's the time to make hay, as they say.
Absolutely.
Having been through what you've been through and the struggles you faced to get every single hour, and having to be the person that's always Johnny on the spot, always putting your hand up, always making a plan to get to the next step. There'll be some people out there listening to this thinking, oh, it's very, very tough. 2 questions.
Yes, go ahead.
What advice do you have for those people on the fence about looking at getting into industry, firstly? And then secondly, with all that you've been through and all the obstacles that you face, has it been worth it?
First of all, it has been worth it. It's a very fulfilling industry to be in. You meet a lot of people. You learn a lot of stuff. It's just very fulfilling. And I would recommend anyone out there that are contemplating doing aviation as a career, go for it. It's so worth it.
For people out there that say want to get a hold of you, ask more advice like you have been getting, what would be the best way to get a hold of you?
TikTok always. Always. Or
Wait
through
for me.
you.
Kelly, thanks so much for coming on the show.
It was a pleasure.
Sharing your experiences with us.
you.
I will be following where your career goes very closely.
And
I'm very
likewise.
and I'm very excited for what the future holds for you.
Thank you.
Someone like you, the determination that you have, the drive that you have, and obviously the guts to make it succeed.
Absolutely.
Is only going to go to incredible places. So I look forward to sharing that journey with you.
Absolutely.
And hopefully,
You're welcome.
hopefully having you on the show again in the future.
Absolutely. Be very happy for that.
Until then, fly safe.
Ciao.
And we look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, likewise.
Cheers.